There are plenty of big storylines to watch in the NHL this season, but today we are going to talk about three of the big ones and tell you why every Nashville Predators fan should be watching them very closely.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Thursday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm an NHL reporter and host with the Hockey News.
Later on, before training camp starts, Emma and I are going to be kicking off a series talking about the big storylines going into the season for the Nashville Predators. Today, though, we are zooming out and we are looking at the big storylines in the league that people are going to be watching this season. We're going to tackle three of those topics, and we're going to explain why they could and probably should matter to Nashville Predators fans. Before we dive into all of that, though, we do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Emma, it is Thursday, the greatest day of the week, as we proclaimed several months ago on the podcast. I can't remember why we said it, but we felt it wholeheartedly. But friends, buckle up. It could go off the rails because upper management Minka is a little bit under the weather and she is not in a supervisory capacity today. So we're going to try to keep it on the straight and narrow and just send good vibes to Minka so she perks right back up. You know, we're always better with a little supervision.
Yes. Had to give her the day off from her supervising upper management duties, but she's resting up. She's medicated, so definitely not in any sort of capacity to be managing us right now. But yes, we will try our best without her.
We're going to see how we do. So, buckle up, friends. All bets are off. No Minka in the house. We are going to be talking about some storylines in the NHL as a whole. And of course, there are a lot of them that people are going to be watching closely in the 2025-26 season. But we have pulled three of the big ones. And we want to talk about them today from the big picture view, but also dial in and talk about what we can learn as Nashville Predators fans as we watch these storylines unfold. And of course, the first one is probably the most obvious one. And that question is, can the Florida Panthers three-peat? And if they don't, which teams could be serious Stanley Cup contenders? Now, this is a conversation at the beginning of every season, but I think it is extra interesting when you're looking at the Florida Panthers going into this season, Emma. So let's just start there, big picture. How do you think the Florida Panthers are going to do this season? And what do you think the likelihood is that they could pull off a three-peat?
Well, honestly, I feel like if any team could, they're set up pretty well. They're returning most of their roster, like the key pieces of their roster. I would point to things like Sergei Bobrovsky's age, but he hasn't really showed any signs of slowing down, despite the fact that he's getting up there. They're going to be without Matthew Tkachuk for a little bit. Obviously, probably going to miss the first part of the season with injury, but man, that team is just they're built really well. And I think they have all the pieces. I don't think it's a sure thing that they're going to repeat or three-peat. But I mean, I think that if ever there was an argument to be made that a team could do it, I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Yeah. This for me is another one of those Locked On Predators sure things.
Yeah.
Because I can see a scenario where other teams may make a push. I can see scenarios where there are teams that may be able to get the edge over Florida. But I am 100% also sure, if somebody told me the Florida Panthers can win this again, and for the same reasons you talked about, look, their general manager did a great job re-signing the people that they needed. Nashville Predators and general managing, that's a conversation for another day. I do want to point out, just fun little fact, they did add former Predators players Luke Cunnin and Matt Benning. I don't know if y'all remember them. They were here. There's a little Nashville connection if they do three-peat. But I am with you. I think Florida is built for contention. I think they are still right smack dab in the middle of that window. The one thing that I will say that I think ties into a conversation that we have had about the Nashville Predators is that Florida is in a tough division. We've talked about the Central Division is just a gauntlet. It is a bear, but Florida is in a division that's very similar to that. And remember, they finished last season third in the Atlantic behind Toronto and behind Tampa Bay. And I think that you can see, look, you don't necessarily have to be the best team in your division. And I think we can all agree objectively that Nashville is not going to finish as the best team in the Central Division, barring some sort of hockey god kerfuffle, where the world has turned upside down. But if you can get in the mix, it comes back to that whole theory. If you can make it to the playoffs, anything can happen. Now, you got to do it with more than duct tape and a dream, my friends. And that may be what Nashville has if they find a way into the postseason. But I think Florida is in a very similar situation to the teams in the Central Division. You are going to have to battle in your own division if you want to just get that spot, get that chance. And once you get the chance, are you built for it? And that may be where the two roads diverge in the woods between the Predators and the Panthers.
Yeah, I think you just see how far away the Predators are from being at that level. I mean, you talk about vision, yes, but overall, like, I still think the East is very winnable for Florida. Now you've got some other teams that are on, up and coming. You've got teams like Montreal, like Ottawa, who surprised everybody last year, and they, look poised to take another step forward. But I don't think they're going to be challenging Florida for the East yet. Like, they're just not there yet. So their window is very much, like you said, like, it's wide open. It could be closing very quickly though. And I think that is why, they've gone all in. We've seen them go all in so aggressively over the last couple of years, because it's like, that's what you do. That's what it looks like, when you have a window, when you're in a window, like it is right now.
Yeah. And that's, like you said, that's when you make your move. So while it would be great for Nashville to finish in a spot where they get an option to make something happen in the postseason, getting to the postseason clearly does not equal winning a Stanley Cup. Ask all of the other teams but the Florida Panthers from last season. So it's going to be interesting to see how Florida does. Just real quick, Emma, if not Florida, then who?
I said it last year, and I'm still gonna. I have a better feeling. I'm still gonna go Dallas. I think the Dallas Stars, they have what it takes. I really do think they have what it takes, especially now with Mikko Rantanen. I gotta go Dallas.
Yeah, we don't talk about this before the show, but that is 100% where I'm at too. And I think it's so interesting because you look at how Dallas finished the season. Last season, you remember they were limp. Do you remember the Nashville Predators beat them in the final game of the season? I know it's hard to believe, but they whooped up on them. And yet Dallas got into the postseason and they were able to be, they were very good in the postseason. And I'm with you. I think that is another team that is built to contend. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And it's going to be interesting to compare teams like Florida and Dallas with the Nashville Predators this season during the regular season as they take the ice. One team that hockey fans are absolutely going to be watching when it comes to the playoffs, Vegas Golden Knights. Coming up, we're going to talk about their big new addition and tell you why we think Preds fans could maybe become Golden Knights fans. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, friends, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether you're into player props or you like to build a same game parlay or even jump in live as the action is unfolding. It makes every game more exciting, whether you are watching your favorite team or you're just keeping an eye on your fantasy football lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Emma, I think everybody is going to be talking about this storyline, and I think it's going to be especially interesting for Nashville Predators fans. We have to talk about Mitch Marner. Of course, we know Mitch Marner left the Toronto Maple Leafs. He is signed with the Vegas Golden Knights, and he's been a very recent hot topic of conversation. Earlier in the week, he gave an interview where he talked about his experience in Toronto and what that was like for him. Emma, I don't know how much of that interview you caught, but what do you think about his decision to kind of share his experience? And do you want to wager a guess on how well received that was in Toronto?
Well, I mean, what could go wrong? I mean, I hear
that is a bet you won't feel anxious about.
I hear that they are very measured with their approach to sports and sports fandom in Toronto. I hear that's a very gentle, easy fan base. Players love playing there universally. Obviously it was not well received at all. It was, whether he intended it this way is really not for me to say, but I think that a lot of Toronto fans are going to feel like he played the victim, whereas they feel like he could have done more, especially in the postseason, to help their team. Again, I think that there's validity to both sides of the argument.
Right.
But it is what it is. They were already probably feeling a little not too warm toward Marner in Toronto. I can say that with certainty. And now, after this interview has come out, he definitely didn't do himself any favors there.
I think he accidentally stirred the drama cauldron big time.
Yeah.
Really big time. And I think, again, I can't speak to his intentions. I think he was just trying to explain his decision from his perspective. I'm with you. There are two sides to this story, and very few times in life when there are two sides to a story is one person 100% right and one person 100% wrong. And so there's plenty to go around when you look at the parting of ways between Mitch Marner and Toronto. I will say this. I'm going to be glued to my TV in January because Toronto comes to Vegas, I think the 15th. And then Vegas goes to Toronto, and we're all just going to pop some popcorn, y'all. And we're just going to sit there and we're just going to watch because I don't know. They seem, as you said, they seem like a fandom with warm welcomes waiting. God bless.
I'm so curious to see what that if he's gonna get a welcome back video. Like what are they gonna do? Like,
It's gonna be a Ryan Gooder situation. Like, what are we?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned, he maybe didn't show up in the postseason like Toronto would have hoped for. Well, Toronto hasn't in general collectively signed up in the postseason like the fans would have liked. But here is something that I think Nashville Predators fans are really going to be interested to watch, and that is how does the star of one team, the team that he was drafted by, the team that he has played his entire career with, how is that player going to transition to something completely new? Because as you recall, it's been a rough ride here in Nashville when you're talking about how Steven Stamkos walked that out and his production on the ice. And I think the big question Nashville Predators fans need to be asking is Mitch Marner going to be able to find the ketchup at Whole Foods way quicker than Stamkos and Marchessault did in Nashville? Emma, if you had to give Marner advice on making this transition based on what we saw this year, what would you tell him?
Oh, I don't even know. I buckle up. I don't know. I think that
Yes.
yeah, I think that I don't know that it's necessarily advice, maybe more of
Mhm.
a warning that, it's not going to be as seamless as you think.
Yeah.
It's gonna, you want to be here, the team wants you here, that's all well and good. You're happy to be here, but like now the heightened pressure, um, heightened,
Yeah.
focus on you. I think it's interesting because he had said to some degree, he talked about, well, getting out of the microscope in Toronto and going far away. Okay, yes, like geographically, yes, you went far away from Toronto, but you brought the microscope with you. And I don't
Yes.
think he
Yeah.
necessarily realizes that. The fans in Vegas will probably be nicer to you. I mean,
Mhm.
because they're not Toronto fans, but the pressure is still going to be there.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just, yeah, you can have the best laid plans, man. I mean, we again, ask us
Oh,
how we know.
age like
We've
our
seen,
presidents.
yes, we've seen things go south pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think it will be interesting to contrast and compare these because on the one hand, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault wanted to stay where they were and it was not going to work out. And that was more big picture from the team. And it feels like Marner's decision was his decision. And so I wonder if just emotionally that transition is going to be a little bit easier. But I agree with you. I think the microscope is going with you, Mitch Marner. Now, he is
Yeah.
also going to a team that I think should be considered a cup contender. So it's going to be interesting how he fits in with that roster and how they do. And I think Predators fans, keep your eye on this. I think it's going to be very interesting to see if there are some of the same bumps in the road as what we saw, or if maybe because the idea was generated from a different party, maybe it will go a little smoother. There is, of course, another reason why we think the Nashville Predators fan base should keep their eye on the Vegas Golden Knights, Emma. And when we talk about contending teams, don't know what's going to happen with the Predators if they're going to even get into the postseason. But when you look at the teams that are expected to make the postseason, Vegas is certainly there. And let's just be honest, there is a reason that we would root for Vegas if they got into the postseason. I mean, like, full disclosure here, Emma.
Well, yeah, two reasons actually, and
2
their names are
reasons.
Jeremy Lauzon and Colton Sissons.
Come
And
on.
especially Sissons, I mean, with what he's meant to the franchise in Nashville, on and off the ice, you want nothing but good things for the guy. And so, and he's one that every year, because he's on such an affordable contract and he's so
Oh,
valuable
every
as a
year.
depth, a bottom six center, really good two-way center, that it was one that every year it's like, okay, brace yourself, he might get traded. And so it's not like a complete, shock that it finally happened. But I had always said, if he is going to go somewhere else, you really want it to be a legitimate contender because he
Yes.
deserves it. And I
Yes.
think Vegas is a legitimate contender. I mean, they've got they've got a really talented forward group up front. I mean, you've got Jack Eichel, Mark Stone. I mean, that whole group. And then you've got, I mean, Colton Sissons to be, your fourth line center. I mean, that's perfect. I think that it's a really good fit for him, really well for him. He's very durable. He's very consistent. All the things that contending teams look for. And then, of course, you've got Jeremy Lauzon on the back end as well. But yeah, I think that Vegas is a team that it's like, I didn't really have any strong opinion one way or the other about them before. But now I'm like, yeah, I got to root for them in the playoffs a little
Yeah.
bit.
I love their glow in the dark jersey. So that had me like, okay, I'm on board. But yeah, I'm with you. Colton Sissons has done everything. And
Mhm.
if that is a team that makes it into the postseason, I would love to see him get a ring. And I think Vegas is very fortunate because, Colton Sissons, if your second line center goes down, Colton Sissons can jump up there and do that. If you lose a guy who's really great on the penalty kill, I'd like to introduce you to Colton Sissons. If, one of your guys goes down on the power play, slide in a little Colton Sissons. If, the E-bug can't make it that night, by God, put in Colton Sissons. And I think we all know, I'm just throwing it out there, Vegas, there's some injuries happen in Vegas. Just these crazy long-term injuries in Vegas. So how lucky are they to have Colton Sissons?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think he's really good. I mean, he is tailor-made for a contender, where
Yes.
there isn't going to be, I don't think he's not going to be pressed into playing a role that is maybe bigger, like too big for him, like he
Mhm.
often was in Nashville, just because they
Mhm.
don't have center depth. I mean, he is a really, really good bottom six forward, and that's
Yes.
exactly what he will be in
Yeah.
Vegas.
Yeah. It's going to be great to keep our eye on Sissons. And of course, like you said, Jeremy Lauzon. Nobody wants Nashville to be perceived as, quote, losing this trade. So, of course, we're going to keep our eye on Nick Hague and how he transitions here in Nashville in a bigger role and watch that as we go. But honestly, it's going to be great to see what Colton Sissons can do in a different environment. It's going to be really interesting to watch. And it's also going to be very interesting for Preds fans to watch a big star in a new location. Coming up, there are several other big name players who are going to become unrestricted free agents at the end of next season. We're going to tell you why those contracts may change the way you feel about the Predators books. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. It does all of the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That is 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, Emma, we got to talk money. It's in poor taste, but Minka's not here, so we're diving right in. This was basically a very dull off season when you're talking about wheeling and dealing and big deals or contracts that, as of the time of this recording, have not been signed. Luke Evangelista, what the hell are you even doing, you all? But anyway, at the end of next season, there are going to be some very big name, unrestricted free agents And we are talking about players like, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Connor McDavid. I don't know if you've seen what Kirill Kaprizov has done in the Central Division, but he's won. Jack Eichel, even old timer Alex Ovechkin, who eats dinner at 4:30 at Cracker Barrel every night, I'm sure. These are contracts that are going to be huge, Emma. And we know that talks have already begun. There's chatter already about whether the franchises are going to be paying up. Agents are kind of getting ready for the negotiations and the talk about whether these guys are going to re-sign where they're at, knowing the big numbers. But you and I have touched on this in some other episodes. And the truth is, contract negotiations and contracts in general in the NHL are getting ready to look completely different because of the new collective bargaining agreement and the salary cap.
Yeah, I think especially with the cap going up. I mean, I think by the time all's said and done, it's what it'll be up like 14 million or something, after, because it'll go up incrementally. It won't immediately go up to 14.
Right.
But that's huge. It's so huge. And I think, like, yes, there's the difference with, now the max deal that players can sign is 7 years instead of 8 years, or it will be starting next year. So that's gonna, impact some things. But I think the cap going up is really gonna be huge. And I think that, again, I've said it before, we're kind of going into uncharted territory here, which is why, and you and I do not enjoy making predictions to begin with.
It's just
But
before us.
no, but especially now that it's like we don't even have anything to compare it to when we're talking about, because before it could be like, oh, well, this player is similar to this player in age and style and whatever it is. So he could get this kind of deal. Like that would have all made sense. Now we're in a whole different landscape now. It's a whole different ball game. So I think now, it used to be kind of seen as, the pinnacle of success as an NHL player, like financially, contractually, the ultimate success would be to get that 8-year max deal for, a high, obviously the higher AAV, the better. But I mean, generally speaking, that was the like, okay, like you're a superstar, you get this 8-year max deal. Now, and this is where I think someone like Austin Matthews was maybe a little ahead of his time, where he was kind of the first one to do this a few years ago, where he signed, I think it was a 5-year deal. He's an 8-year caliber player,
Right.
based on, the current landscape, and he chose to sign for 5 at a higher AAV. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that now, because on one hand, you're now going to have, it's funny how the roles are kind of switching. Now the teams are going to want to get players locked up for as long of a term as they can, because they can get them locked in at a lower rate, basically. And the players, meanwhile, are going to be pushing back, and they're going to say, well, no, I want to make more money, so offer me more money now on a shorter contract, which is so funny, because it's like the opposite of what we see right now. Right now, it's the players who want long term, and the teams don't, because they don't want to, they don't want to be hamstrung with their flexibility with the cap. So I think now you are going to see a lot more of this back and forth. And, we're talking about how it's uncharted territory for us. It is for the GMs and for the players too. So it's like they don't really know how to go about, and it's almost like, you talked about all the guys who are going to be looking for new contracts. I mean, McDavid, Kaprizov, Eichel, that's just to name the big 3. But it's almost like, and all those guys have been eligible to sign extensions since July 1st, and they haven't, which again is not a big deal. But you know what? It's the summertime, and there's not much to there's not much to talk about. So people are
Yeah.
talking about it. Oh, why haven't they signed an extension yet? Does that mean they're not staying? I'm like, honestly, I feel like this is maybe oversimplifying it a little bit, but I feel like this is all just one big game of chicken, and they're all waiting to
Mhm.
see, okay, who's going to sign first? And
And
then
what
we
are you
go
gonna
from there.
get? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's like we don't have a benchmark right now, like it was
Mhm.
before it was, well, and with McDavid too, it's like, well, you got to pay, like right now, Draisaitl is the highest paid player in the NHL. Well, you got to pay McDavid more than Draisaitl.
Right.
So, how are you going to do that? Are you going to do it for a long term? Does he want to stay in Edmonton? Does he want to win a cup but do it somewhere else? I mean, there's just like there's so much nuance here, and I think
Mhm.
that it really will be fascinating to see how this all starts to play out. And it gives me, honestly, a little bit less anxiety about the Predators, knowing that they don't have any big free agents coming
Yes.
up in the
Yes.
next year, just because, like, the amount of stress, you know how we worry. It's just
It's a
too
lot.
much. It's a
It's a
lot.
lot. It really is flipping everything on its head, and I don't envy, like you mentioned, the GMs and the agents that are trying to negotiate on this precipice of something very different. Like you said, term was like the Cabbage Patch Doll, the Beanie Baby of these contracts, and now AAV is the Labubu. Like, that is what matters now. That is the hot thing now. And when you sign McDavid, when you sign Eichel, when you sign Kaprizov, you will very quickly reset the market. But right now we're in limbo. Where is that? Where's it going to land? What is McDavid's contract going to look like when it comes to term? Because again, those three big guys right there are really going to help reset the market. And then we're going to be able to go on from there. I do think, I appreciate that we don't have a lot of stress about re-signing like Philip Forsberg, because in this window of, we don't quite know exactly where the landscape is going to fill out with these big contracts. It also makes me think, hey, Predators fans, I know there are some contracts that you don't like on the books, but I think they're going to look more affordable, and you may be able to, you're going to still hate the term, but you may be able to understand, and you have to kind of keep it in perspective, that like those contracts, like the Soros contract, the Shea contract, those were under the old rules where you wanted a long term. And I think they're going to look like, you look at Philip Forsberg is making $8.5 million through 2030. In 2027, 28, we're going to be like, bargain. Look at us with Philip Forsberg, next to nothing. So I think it's really going to change the way people view the Predators books. Now, I'm not saying that they got them all right. Let me be clear.
Yeah.
There is still some contracts that, you're going to feel uncomfortable with, but I think you're going to have to remember the before and after of this
Yeah.
changing landscape with contracts, because everything will be viewed differently. It's going to be interesting to see how they sort out. I cannot wait to see what Connor McDavid signs. I am so curious about the
And
term and
yeah.
and the money, because he's going to, like you said, you got to pay him more than Draisaitl. So where's that going to go?
And Draisaitl's at what, 14? Something like
I
that?
think
I
he's
mean,
14.
there is talk of McDavid being the first $20 million
Mhm.
player. And I mean, like, I could see it.
Yeah.
Although I would say, perhaps now, yes, new landscape, things are changing. It's not apples to apples, but I would just say, maybe for a cautionary tale, look at Toronto and look what happens when you sink all of your salary cap into 3 or 4
Three.
guys. Doesn't usually work out too well.
Yeah, especially when one of
But
them leaves.
yeah, and goes to Vegas maybe and
Goes
brings
to
his
Vegas.
microscope with him. It just hypothetically speaking. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do think it's gonna be very interesting. But I also just think, like, looking at again, by the time all is said and done, the salary cap will be up another like 14 million. You think about it, you can fit 2 more Brady Shays onto the Predators roster, which, like, at the
Right.
end of the day, it's like, okay, that's not actually breaking the bank that much.
Right.
But again, I'm not in support of like, I don't see why people don't like this contract. Believe me, I get it. I get it,
Mhm.
especially with how
Mhm.
last year went. But I just think that it is going to soften the blow a little bit when we start to see the cap go up and we start to see
Yeah.
these new contracts.
Another thing that will soften the blow for Predators fans is production, as in let's see some from players like Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. That is going to be a topic that we're going to tackle when we kick off our series about hot storylines going into training camp with the Nashville Predators. We're going to kick that off next week. So make sure you tune in to the show. We are going to get you ready for that. We also next week, we have prospect hockey. We've got the prospects in town for a practice, and then they are headed out to the prospect tournament down in Florida. So we'll have coverage of all of the young sprouts as well. So make sure you stay tuned in. And friends, next week we're back to 5 days a week. You can't shake us. We're just everywhere. Hopefully Minka will be back by then.
Yeah, we're going to need some guidance for sure. Someone to keep us in line.
I agree. I think we did great. Like there was no need to bleep us. I just think we stayed on the
Yeah,
rails. She's taught
for the
us
most
well.
part,
Yep.
she has.
Shout out to Minka. That's a hard job, but well done, Minka. Emma, before we log off on this Thursday, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at @AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that is going to do it for this Thursday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We'll see you then.